Welcome to my channel. This is an indication of some of the things that I cover on a regular basis in my videos. If you haven't already subscribed, please feel free to do so, and don't forget to click the little bell so that you'll get notified of future videos. Please feel free to share my videos on your social media, and I hope you enjoy the video which follows. Well, it's April 25th, just 24 hours after I uploaded my last garden update. I'm starting to film the next one, which will probably take a week or two, but I'm back in the hoop house, as you can see. I just prepared that little bit of a bed there with some commercially purchased compost, and I have planted 3 different kinds of greens in it. One of my free seed packs from Annapolis Seed Company. Whenever you place an order with them, they include something, a little bonus for you. Was a lettuce mixture. It said a mixture of 12 of their most popular lettuce. So that's the first area. You can see the little seed packets there, so I can remember what is planted where. The second area is a mesclun mix, Oriental Greens mild mix, it says, so hopefully it's not full of hot mustards. And I think that was also a gift from Sandra. If you're watching, Sandra, thank you. I have bought it in the past myself, but I don't recall ordering any this year, so I'm assuming that came from Sandra. And the last third, down that way, is planted in spinach. Quite heavily in spinach, because I will just be eating probably the baby spinach greens. It gets warm in here quite quickly and spinach will bolt. All of these things may bolt if they're allowed to stay in here in the heat, but I'll use them for early greens before it gets too hot. That's if they come up and grow. So they've only been in there a few minutes and just been watered, so we'll see what happens in the future. Well, good morning, everybody. It's April 26th, and I'm planting peas. One of my few surviving raised beds here. Well, I still have the raised beds, but the wood has disappeared on most of them, rotted, and had to be removed. This one looks like it might survive another year. I still use them as raised beds, they just don't have a border around them anymore. I'm putting in 4 rows. This is a 4-foot square bed. I'm putting in 4 rows of peas, quite heavily seeded, thickly seeded. The variety is called Spring, an early pea, supposedly. I don't think I've ever grown it before. I selected it because it is what I would have called a bush pea, rather than a telephone pea, the kind that grow 10, 12 feet tall. These are only supposed to grow a foot or 2 tall and support themselves. The seed packet from Vessey's used a term that I've never heard used before with peas. They called them a determinate variety, which is what you would call tomatoes, the kind of tomatoes that only grow to a specific height and stop growing, and then continuing to grow like a vine. Well, there's a determinate variety. So that's the terminology they've used on these. An early season determinate variety. Peas can be planted as soon as the soil can be worked. And they will withstand, once they get growing even, they will withstand a light frost without doing too much damage to them. So they're a safe crop to start really early. And this soil can be worked. And I just added a cartload of well-composted bedding and chicken manure. It's been composting for over a year now, so nothing that's too strong, but it'll have some good nutrients in it. However, when I stick a fork down in that bed to turn the soil, you can only go down about 7 or 8 inches and you hit ice. I don't think that will bother them. It had straw or hay on top of it, which was insulating it. And now that I've removed that, and it's got a darker surface, that frost will continue to go out of the ground down low, and the peas are well above it. I also planted peas in the elevated planter that's on my little front deck outside of those glass doors that have all the trees in front of it right now. I put in quite a few in that little thing. Worked last year. I mean, not that you got any big meal off it or anything, but I enjoy opening the door, going out and shelling out and eating some green peas. Well, that is the peas in on April 26th. Still April 26th, and I'm just about to do the last of my planting of at least the things that I'm growing this year that can be planted this early. But I did some digging around to see if I could find the rhubarb that I started from seed last year. Not sure now if there were 2 or 3 plants here, but I have found 2. That one's got a leaf already up, and the other one I'll show you in just a second here. The second one hasn't got a leaf unfurled yet, but the little crown thing has come up through the soil, so I'll get rhubarb big enough to harvest and try some this year or not. But first time I'd ever grown it from seed. I have at least 2 plants. I'm not certain if there was a third one. I'll have to dig around, see if I can find it sometime later on, I guess. Well, I carried on my investigation, and yes, there is a third one, and there is a fourth one. I thought I had lost one of these last summer. In the hotter weather in August, one of them just sort of died away, and I thought, well, that's it, I've lost one. But evidently I have 4 rhubarb plants, so between the 4 of them, if I take a stalk or 2 from each one, I should get some rhubarb to try, I guess. Well, the 2 things that I'm growing that can still be planted this time of year are carrots and parsnips. This is the last of the carrot seed. This little thing has really worked well with the carrot seed. I have it set on its smallest setting and shaking it like I don't know, like you might shake a pepper shaker at the table, I guess. It's only putting out a seed occasionally, so I've been able to go the length of that row twice and get them relatively evenly distributed, so working better outside than it did in the house, that's for sure. The trench that I've made for them is deeper than I would like to see, so all I'm going to do is take pinches of soil and cover them over, and then I will tamp it down. Don't want to bury them too deep. They're a very tiny seed. So I'll do that the whole length of that row and then tamp them down. The variety is called Rainbow, and it is those sort of multicolored carrots, but not so many colors that you can get in some of the mixed packages. This has yellow and 2 shades of orange and white, I guess. But it also says on the package that actually they are all the same variety. They're just been bred somehow to produce different colors, so that they should also come out with a uniform length. Well, if I get uniform length carrots, it'll be the first time I ever got uniform length. I don't really care how long they are. I just love fresh carrots right out of the ground. There's no comparison to those and the things that you buy in stores. Carrots, you can't put down any compost, or not very much. They don't like a rich compost soil, so I didn't add anything to this bed. It had beans growing in it last year, a row of yellow beans and a row of green beans. I just pulled those plants out and tilled the soil up a little bit with a fork. I'm going to plant my parsnips next, and they would have benefited from a bit of compost. But I'm not adding any to the bed because of the carrots. If you put compost in a bed with carrots, you get those things that have 3 or 4 legs on them. Kind of funny looking things when you pull them out. It's because the ground was too rich. So my parsnips are just going to have to rough it, I guess. I'll show you those when I'm seeding them in a few minutes. Right now I've got to finish covering up my carrots. Well, the variety of parsnip that I'm growing is called Javelin. It says it's a long, slender type of a parsnip, ivory in color. I've planted them very thickly. There were a lot of seeds, and I decided to use them all. If I should be so lucky and they all germinate, they'll have to be thinned, but I don't have that great luck with them usually, so we'll just have to wait and see what happens, I guess. But parsnips really are something that benefit from being planted this early. They like a cold start in the soil, and that's what helps them to germinate faster. So hopefully that will hold true here. I hope to show some of these things before I put this video up in a couple of weeks. I'm not so sure about parsnips and carrots. They can take 2 to 3 weeks to germinate, but we will see what happens, I guess. I've got to get in the house. It is starting to rain once again. We've had, I don't know, a day and a half without rain, and now we're in for a day and a half of heavy rain. April 27th, Saturday. I don't think it could possibly rain any harder than it is right now. Just wanted to show you one or two of the peppers. They are starting to come along here. That's one of the King of the North, the bell pepper that I'm hoping you can grow in this area. Supposed to be able to anyway. I always have to remind myself every year when plants start to grow. I keep wanting them to grow faster and faster, and plants grow in size proportionate to the size that the plant is. If it's got tiny little leaves, it's going to take it a while to do any growing, but as the leaves get larger, it will grow faster. That's my theory, and that's what I hope happens. This is one of the Aztec rainbow peppers. Might look like two, but the other one that you're seeing is in the pot behind it, which is a tomato seedling, I guess. I just finished transplanting my tomatoes. I'll show you those next. The peppers themselves are supposed to be several different colors in the Aztec rainbow before they fully develop and ripen, and I think red is the last color that they turn, but evidently also the foliage is quite interesting, and they're growing quite vigorously. Another sea of name tags or plant tags here. Those are my those are my tomato seedlings. Mostly, I think what's in frame there is all tomato seedlings. Just finished transplanting them. They're looking kind of dry, but I was able to bottom water in this tray because it's now all completely things like peppers and tomatoes, and they're all in the same size pot and whatever. And there's no heat mat there anymore. So it's just started to take up the water in the tray. I'll have to watch it the rest of the day, and if it needs a little more, add a little more. Mostly what I have grown, or the ones I've grown the largest number of there, if you see some with number 5 on them, those are cole. The determinate tomato that I wanted to try is supposed to be excellent for this climate. And the others, I guess, are, well, I guess some of the seeds were given to me by the same company, the Annapolis Seed Company, where I bought the cole seeds, and the rest were gifts from friends on YouTube here. So anxious to try them all, but I'll be growing mostly the cole and 1 or 2 of each of the other varieties. And as I've said before many times, I guess the new community garden here will benefit with my overflow of plants that I can't use. Give you a little look on the lower level here before I lower the lights back down. More tomato plants along the edge, and up to the far left you might be able to see some of them. And I just wanted to show you how the geraniums are coming along. They are really starting to develop quite nicely. Some of the foliage looks different. They're all in the same variety of geranium, but there are several colors, so I suspect the different colors might have a bit of difference in the foliage, but they are looking good. The soil is still quite wet since I flooded them whenever that was that I transplanted them over a week ago. So I didn't flood again. I top watered the tomato seedlings. I don't want to get too much water and destroy the geraniums. But there they are. Everything, I guess, that's in the house currently has been repotted into individual pots, and the other seedlings that I will be growing will be later on out in the hoop house. I'll start squash and whatever in individual pots, and cucumbers, but I'll start those out in the hoop house. Well, lunch today is going to be a classic French omelette. At least I hope that's what it will turn out like. An omelette aux fines herbes, an herb omelette, and I'm even using the traditional French herbs that they use in the omelette aux fines herbes. First herbs to be harvested out of the hoop house this year: French tarragon and a bit of chives. I'm going to try to chop up without chopping up my fingers. Anywhere in France, if you go to a good restaurant lunchtime or whatever, and you decide you don't want a heavy meal, the chef will gladly provide you with an omelette. And hopefully what I'm about to show you is similar to what theirs will look like. If they don't have the herbs available, they'll give you a plain omelette, an omelette au nature. But it's part of the French chef's training. No French chef can graduate from culinary college if they can't produce the classic French omelette. I think that's probably plenty of herbs for one omelette. It's going to be a 3-egg omelette. The herbs are out of the coop house and the eggs are out of my chicken coop. The girls have started laying again. Add a little salt and pepper before I start beating them up. If you really want to see how this is done, Google Jacques Pepin French omelette, or go on YouTube and look for Jacques Pepin's video on the French omelette. He is, of course, a world-class master chef, but he does a video on producing this omelette, and of course he can turn them out without any problem at all. It's traditionally made with either 3 or 4 eggs. These were quite large, so I went with 3. Just add the herbs and beat those in a bit. I'll meet you over at the stove. Well, it works best in a non-stick skillet, which is what this is, one of those ceramic non-stick skillets. A little olive oil and a pat of butter. You want the skillet to be good and hot. Now that the skillet is good and hot and the butter has melted, add the herb and egg mixture. And it's very important to keep everything in motion. First, make sort of like a scrambled egg mixture. But you keep it in motion because the French omelette is not supposed to be brown. It's supposed to be a yellow egg color. Now, this is the interesting point. At this point you bring it down into the corner. Jacques Pepin is much better at this part than I am, but I have improved. I keep trying. I like mine when it's still a little soft in the center. The idea is not to brown the outside of the thing, and also turning it over on itself like this, putting the soft part in the center, that will continue to cook even once it's out of the pan. So, I'll meet you over at the plate. I got a little bit of browning there. Jacques Pepin would throw me out of his class. I'll cut it in two and see if it's moist at all in the middle. Yes, it's still nice and moist in the middle, and that's what I like. So I'll give this a try. I love the flavor of that herb combination. That is some of my homemade sourdough toast. Unfortunately, I did not grow the tomato. My tomato seedlings are just about 4 leaves right now. Well, there we are. First meal from the chicken coop and the hoop house of the spring. Well, it's the 2nd of May. I've decided that I'm going to plant one each of my different squash varieties that I'm growing this summer. I'm growing 4 different varieties. In larger pots than I would normally start a squash seedling in. I won't be planting the rest of them until probably the beginning of the 3rd week of May. But I thought it would be interesting if I planted one of each variety now, and hopefully that will get a good start. I won't transplant it out in the garden until I transplant the other ones out there. Like I say, I won't be planting until the 3rd week of May, but they should be a much larger plant than the other ones will be, and I'm hoping that that will give me a head start on one plant anyway of each variety. First one is spaghetti squash, seed from Southpaw Davy. Thank you, Dave. And the next one is seed again from Sandra. I'm not so sure I can pronounce this, but it's an Italian squash. I'm assuming a zucchini type squash, a bush plant, Coccozelli, something like that. You can read it. It's on a nice compact plant. It says it's dark green with lighter green stripes. I almost think I've grown a variety similar to that sometime in the past. But anyway, I like to grow some kind of a zucchini type squash every summer. I share those with the hens. I enjoy them, and when they get too big, the size that I don't care for, I give them to the hens, and the hens love them. And this is my Lower Salmon River squash, a winter squash. And last but not least, the baby blue Hubbard. Hubbard squash is usually a huge squash. Very good keeper. But for me, if I cut into a huge squash, it's what do you do with it? So I am glad to be able to try anyway. A miniature version of the, well, it says it's a personal size squash, probably about a pound squash or something. So those will get watered and put in the hoop house, and I'll give you a look at them when they come up. It's just in there, and the mesclun and the lettuce and the spinach that I planted the other day is starting to come up. I won't bother to show you right now. It's very tiny little seedlings, but before I close this down later on next week to upload it, I will give you a look at what's happening in there. I meant to say I'm not sure how to classify spaghetti squash, if you call that a summer squash or a winter squash. I tend to think of it as a winter squash. It stores very well. I've had spaghetti squash stored for like 3 or 4 months before I used them, and they were still in perfect condition. So I'm not sure if that's called a summer squash or a winter squash, but haven't grown it in a number of years and looking forward to having it again. I only tried it once, as they recommend for children, with a spaghetti sauce on it, but split it in half, take out the seeds out of the center, and I roast it. And then you take a fork and tease the strands out, and with salt and pepper and butter, it's delicious. Anyway, that is my first squash seedlings. Seeds, not seedlings, planted. Well, we're all another day older and deeper in debt. That's what the song says. It's now May 3rd. I've decided to do the same thing with the 3 varieties of cucumbers that I'm growing this year. I'm going to start them in containers, even though I suspect these 3 particular plants will probably get planted in the hoop house when I'm ready to start planting in there. All 3 of them are what they call parthenocarpic cucumbers. all female blossoms, and they don't need to be pollinated in order to produce a cucumber. They produce seedless cucumbers, although some people say they still think there are seeds in them. You do see a little fleshy thing. What you're looking at is what they call the female zygote. It would have turned into a seed if that particular blossom had been pollinated. But if I'm only growing parthenocarpic varieties, none of them should get pollinated because there's no other cucumbers here for them to cross-pollinate with. The first one is called Lisboa, and if you are not aware of it, Lisboa is what the Portuguese call Lisbon. It's the name of the Portuguese city of Lisbon. How this gets named Lisboa, I don't know. Maybe it was bred in Lisbon originally. But this particular variety, all of these seeds are from Veseys. I don't remember what I paid for any of them. This one and the one here, I'll show you in a minute, called Mini Crunch, are sort of elite seeds. Whatever you paid $3 or $4 or $5 for the package, you get 5 seeds. So I won't be generous and put 2 or 3 in. I'll put 1 in and hope that it germinates. And it says that this particular one will perform well in the greenhouse or a high tunnel or in the field. And it's a multi-purpose hybrid cucumber. Parthenocarpic, as I said, a slicer cucumber, meaning it will set fruit without pollination. I guess I already explained that. And it says it sets extra early in the field. Well, I plan to plant most of my cucumbers out in the garden. I'll show you where in a minute here. This one is the one called Mini Crunch. It's a cucumber that only grows to 3 or 4 inches long. I'm almost thinking it's probably the variety that you see, at least here, in grocery stores. Large chain grocery stores, package of usually, I think, 8 of them for a lot of money, more than a cucumber's worth, in my opinion. But I like them. I have bought them several times. They are a nice crunchy little cucumber, and they're great for salads, but I'm hoping they'll also be great for pickling. I'd like to make some more pickles this summer sometime. Here is Mini Crunch planted. And the last one I grew last year. It's a European gherkin called Quarantine. And it's a small cucumber too, a little larger than the one they're calling Mini Crunch. It grows 4 to 6 inches. And with them, you get a regular envelope of seeds. There's probably 25 or 30 or more in there, so I'll be generous and put 2 seeds in this one in case one doesn't germinate. Well, I will water these in and put them in the hoop house. And I don't know if it'll be before I get this video up or not, but when they come up, I'll show you how they're growing. Right now, I take a little peek at where I'm going to grow my cucumbers outside here. Well, this is the cage that I've grown corn in the last 2 years, but I'm not growing any corn this year. And I thought I would grow cucumbers in it. I grow my corn in a cage because the raccoons get it. If I don't protect it in some manner, I don't get corn. The raccoons eat it all. Well, I'm not concerned about the raccoons eating my cucumbers, but I thought if I planted cucumber plants around the perimeter, that they would grow up the fencing and might even look nice. In the mind's eye now it looks nice anyway, so we'll see what happens this summer. But that's going to be my cucumber cage this year. It's May 7th, and I'm putting together the final few clips to get this rather lengthy video uploaded. This is in the little elevated planter. It's probably 1 meter high, I guess, and probably 1 meter long and 1/2 meter or 3/4 of a meter wide. I've had it for several years. It's made out of cedar, so it's never started to decompose yet, but those are the first of the peas starting to come up. I'm going out to the garden now to finish the final clips out there, but as of this morning I hadn't seen any peas up in the garden. I don't know if I've lost peas in this particular planter or not, because I have found like the skin surface off of peas laying on the top of the soil, and there's a lot of birds that still visit this. There used to be a feeder hanging above it all winter, and as you can see, little seeds there that hopefully are never going to germinate. For some reason those are the ones that the birds don't eat, but I still find birds scratching in it most days, so hopefully I'll get some peas out of it, or maybe the birds will enjoy the peas. Hopefully you can make out the 4 lighter brown mounds of material there. That is well composted chicken manure and the bedding that I use in the coops, which is wood shavings, wood chips and whatever, mostly shavings, finer than chips would be. It's been composting for a full year, and I pile it up when I take it out of the coops, not too far away from where the coops are, in mounds. And throughout the summer and fall, when the girls are out free ranging, they dig in it constantly and get bugs and worms and whatever, but they spread it and keep turning it over, and it works beautifully. So this time of year, when I'm ready to move it around and make some use of it, it's a flat area, but it's, oh, I don't know, it's a half a foot thick or so with this nice composted material. Well, I'm going to spread it. It's getting hot in there. It's been a sunny day and the hoop house is heating up. Well, I spread it around, but it will get mixed in with the soil before I plant anything. I'll just spread it around, that way it'll dry out better. And I'm hoping to go to one of the garden centers that I frequent this time of year, next week maybe. I got an organic potting mix there last year that I grew most of the things that I grew in containers in, and it worked out quite well. I think to perk these beds up in here, it's been quite a while since they've had very much done to them. I'm going to buy enough of it to put a layer of that over the top, and then once that's been put over the top, I'll just take the fork and mix everything in together. But let's take a look at a couple of things that are growing in there. This first little patch here is where I put that package of lettuce seeds, supposedly 12 different varieties. It's difficult to see anything. I watered this morning, but the surface has dried out, and I can't water in this kind of heat because it would just cook the little seedlings. So there's a fair amount coming up in there. Not as much as there is in the bed next to it, which I'll give you a better look at right now. Now this is the mesclun mix, I think mostly Asian greens. I can't tell if it's all greens or if there's some weeds in there. I won't know until it gets a little bit larger, I guess, but there certainly was better germination in that particular patch. I guess you can see those. That's the spinach, and it has come up very well. I sort of planted it in little rows mostly, but obviously some of it wasn't in a row. It's popping up everywhere. Seeds that I dropped, I guess, but so far so good. I just hope it doesn't get so hot in here that it bolts before I get to eat any of it. And this is where the French tarragon came from for that omelette a bit ago. Very hardy, comes back every year. I believe it's actually in the mint family, just by going by the square stem on it, but comes back beautifully here in the hoop house. But I've also grown it out in the garden years ago. I eventually lost it, but it came back for me in the garden many years as well. French tarragon has to be started from a rooted cutting. It's sterile. It does not produce blossoms or seeds. So if you've got a seed packet that says you can grow tarragon, it's Russian tarragon, and maybe you like it, I don't know, but I only tried it once, and what a mess. Horrible flavor. This is my patch of chives, and they're called Asian chives. Right now they don't look too different from the ordinary kind of chives, but they grow the size of like spring onions, the greens on them. I really like them, and keep cutting them and they just keep coming back, the same as any chive all summer. And yes, my garlic chives made it through the winter in the hoop house. I have no idea how many times I have bought garlic chives in the spring and planted them in the garden, and never to be seen again. They always winter kill here. I'm so pleased to see that little patch is up and growing. First time I've ever successfully brought it through the winter. Well, the onions are doing fine. Nothing more than what I expected them to be doing at this time of the year. Onions are what they call day neutral. At least the ones that we plant here in this part of the world are day neutral. By that they mean that up until the summer solstice, the third week of June, they will concentrate most of their energy into growing the green tops. And then after the solstice, when the days start to get shorter, that triggers them to put their energy into the bulb, into the onion. So far so good. There were 72 sets in that tray, and when I transplanted them out, 71 of them had sprouted and turned green, and there was one that had not sprouted, and I'll show you it now. This little guy didn't have anything green on it, and it has now sprouted, so you certainly can't complain about the quality of the onion sets. That was 100% of them have started to grow. It remains to be seen whether or not I can do anything with them and grow an onion, but the quality of the sets was excellent. Well, you can make out that wee little green thing. That is the first pea that I see coming up in this bed. I think I've looked it over pretty thoroughly, but we're supposed to get some rain tonight, just some light showers, and then a decent day tomorrow, so that will probably bring more of them. Well, if you can see those little green shoots there, something interesting is happening in this bed. I think I mentioned when I planted the peas that this is where I tried to grow the soft neck garlic last year, and it was miserable. I had absolutely no luck with it. Well, evidently I didn't get it all cleaned out of here. I have little clumps of it coming up in 4 or 5 places. So I'll let them grow and see if it does any better this year, but I now have soft neck garlic. This is the raised bed that's next to the bed that I planted the carrots and parsnips in, and there's nothing coming up in that one yet. But I planted this with hardneck garlic last fall, and they're starting to come up now. Normally, with me, hardneck garlic would have been up long before this. I covered this with straw and kept it covered all winter, and this spring I discovered the straw was acting as an insulator. It was keeping it frozen. So I removed the straw, and as soon as it started to thaw up, I have garlic coming up. They're not all up yet, but there's a few here, there, and everywhere, so hopefully there'll be more of them. I won't make you look at all 4 of my rhubarb plants that I grew from seed, but I'm very pleased with them. And most of them now have 2 leaves, with more leaves coming, so they're kind of short-stemmed at this point, but it is only the first year for them after having started them from seeds. I'm hoping at some point this summer that I get enough off of them to make a pie or something. Well, to close this off and get this long video started uploading, this is a little look at the light garden with my seedlings. What you're looking at there is the peppers. Move over this way to the various kinds of tomatoes. So far so good. I'll give you a look at the lower level down there. Now these are my geraniums and also some more tomato seedlings. Didn't have room for all of my tomatoes on the upper level, but that's everything that I will be starting in the house from seeds, so they've got lots of space to grow yet, and they've got the tomato and pepper seedlings are in 4-inch pots, I think, so I won't be putting anything out in the garden until the second week of June. Things in the hoop house will go earlier, so a lot of my peppers and tomatoes will go in the hoop house probably towards the end of May. But the ones that I'm giving to the community garden, I probably won't take them up until into the first week of June anyway. Well, if you have watched this thing all the way through to the bitter end, thank you very much for watching.